And welcome back, folks, to another Elevated Trader podcast. We have started a brand new book. Kristen and I are super excited about it. You know who my co-host is, Miss Dr. Kristen Kidgel. She's with me right now. And we are going to be starting Peak Mind by Amishi Jha. And I apologize if I did not pronounce that name correctly, but super pumped, super excited. How about you, Kristen? What are your thoughts so far?
Hey. Okay. Well, it's a couple things. She doesn't use the word doctor anywhere, but I do believe she has a PhD, FYI. It is not written as such anywhere, so I don't know why she wouldn't use that. But this book, I'm loving it. It's awesome. I've already shared it with quite a few people, including my son, who just decided to go back to college for a whole new career. And he's like, Mom, what am I going to do for my brain? Like, I got to get my brain back in gear. And I was like, read this book with me. So yeah, this is going to be good.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's, this was actually not even on our radar. And one of my students recommended reading it. So like I said, I'm pumped. I've gotten through the first 4 chapters. You and I both have. That's what this episode's going to be about. And yeah, it's definitely an eye opener. It's definitely breaking some preconceived ideas and notions that we had in particular. Is there anything that stands out to you right off the bat that you kind of want to kick off?
Well, I've kind of been back and forth on this thought, but that multitasking is actually really bad, which I'm kind of bummed about, but I can understand it. You know, it makes sense when you read what she's telling you and all that stuff. So What about you?
No, I mean, it's funny because I was going to say the same thing. That was one of the biggest myths that she debunked immediately, was the idea that multitasking is a good thing. And because I've always understood that women were better at multitasking than men, but I don't think it's good for anybody. So it's best not to do that. And I really liked her analogies. So basically, what is this book about? Let's start with that. What's the book about?
I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about, men and women.
Okay.
I think we are better at redirecting our flashlight.
Yeah.
But we're also
know
better.
What that is, though.
That's right, because we're going to talk about it. But I also think because of whether you have children or not, that a motherly, feminine, typically like a motherly person, probably has the capability of having that wider sonar to pick up what's happening around them, like to protect our babies, to protect our family. And so I don't know. That's kind of where I go. Does she go there? No, she doesn't do a gender thing, but she does talk about the brain, the research. So,
well, and the instinct, right? She talks a little bit about the instinct of the predatory aspect of it, which is kind of what you're talking about now, because that instinct of alert, caregiving, all of that's built into a mother from way back when. I mean, that's the whole thing. So it's almost, because even not as a mother, when I'm in a grocery store or some place in public and I hear the word mom, like my kids are grown, but you hear the word mom, your instinct is to turn and look and react to that, because you're just naturally born. It's an instinct, right? And I don't know, maybe it just happens to mothers, but once you have your kids, then that's kind of like a key word that just really kicks you out to alert. So I don't know if it's instinctual or if it's just...
Well, it's a blessing and a curse, right? We're sensitive to our surroundings, but crap, if we're sensitive to our surroundings, that means we're squirreling more often, which means we need this book and this whatever we want to call it more than most, which is kind of where I sit with it. I'm like, I need this.
Right. So on a side note, I mean, because even baby crying, does that get you, like, does it affect you in a...
Absolutely. I just, as you said that, I was like, okay, when was the last time I probably was affected by that? Likely in an airport or definitely on a plane.
Right. I don't think it affects men the same way. So we definitely have those instinctual kind of triggers, I guess. And that's really what she's talking about when we get distractions, right? There's distractions in our life that pull our attention away. So let's talk a little bit about what this book is about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I forgot. No, I'm just kidding. It's about our attention.
Yeah, this book is about intention. It is called Peak Mind, and the idea is that we as a society are finding it harder and harder to stay focused. And with social media and how busy our lives are and everything that's going on, that problem is actually becoming worse. That's what they're finding. So it's not because of social media. It's actually because, what she's basically getting to, and like I said, we've only gotten through the first 4 chapters, so I'm sure we're going to learn more, but she's really suggesting that it's coming from a lack of quietness in our minds, that lack of effective daydreaming, as you want to put it, that's making it harder and harder for us to actually focus. So break it down for us. What are the things that she talks about as far as the flashlights are concerned and the different types of
Oh, well,
alertness?
Before we get there, I think just talking about attention is important. And one of the things that also stood out was just like building a bicep muscle or anything you want to improve on, you have to practice with it and get better at it. And then that's the goal here, is that she is stating with no doubt, with all research, that we are missing 50% of our lives all day.
Yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah, all day, because of our brains doing this thing where our attention gets pulled in different directions. She's like, don't fight it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing. The goal is to be able to pull it back as quickly as possible, as intently as possible, and not to like, oh my gosh, I got to start back from the beginning to understand where I squirreled away, but like coming right back. Right. And the attention, I think, is of focus on top of it. So she talks about the flashlight being, we only have one, not 2, not 3. The flashlight is where your attention is drawn to and where you're pointing it. So if you're pointing it over here, then your attention is going to go in that direction. She also talks about the juggler, where this is more of a floodlight situation, or was that all 3? She talks about the floodlight.
Yeah, there's 3. There's the floodlight, the juggler, and the flashlight.
Right. And so she spends a lot more time on the importance of understanding all 3, but the flashlight is where we're going to start. That's where we're going to be working to increase our attention. Right.
And they all make sense, right? I mean, when you look at a flashlight, the beam is very pinpointed. It's directional. A floodlight is more vast, and it opens up more space, but not as pinpoint. You're going to lose detail in it. And then the juggler obviously is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to the focus is changing constantly. And
that's where that 50% starts really kicking. Yeah.
Right. And she even starts the book out by saying that, but not that I have it. I won't be able to keep it but now that I have it. So she's talking about our attention. Now that I have it, I won't be able to keep it for very long. So right off the bat, she's acknowledging that we're going to not even understand 50% of the book, or we're going to miss 50% of the book because we're not going to be paying attention to it. I thought it was pretty cool. And so no, perfect. And the flashlight, it comes down to self-awareness, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah, it does. And we would be remiss to make sure to mention that this all came about with her following her desire for particular career paths, but then it was her own kind of breakdown, so to speak, of stressors where she was realizing, why is this happening to me? And then so she combined what she knew versus what she was dealing with. And then that just led to one thing to another. I mean, the stories in here are fantastic, and the research is not deep. You probably would like more tables and graphs and stuff. But for me, she just drops it in there. It's like, listen, we're using firemen, we're using people in the Army, and so we're also using people that meditate all the time. So she's using like this huge amount of people to do this research and just been like, these numbers are accurate.
It's actually quite cool because she mentions quite a few studies, and the studies, I'm actually looking for some of them. That I want to take some of these studies. Like I want to try some of the tests that she talks about because I want to see how I perform, because it sounds so easy when she's describing the test or the, but nobody's passing it. It's consistent across the board that the attention span is just losing. But here's the good news. And this is what's really cool with neuroplasticity. Because of neuroplasticity, we can actually train our brain, just like any other muscle. And you mentioned that earlier. We can train our brain to have better attention. So I thought this has been a real eye opener for me, actually, just the understanding of the whole thing. So what we're going to do is this episode is focused solely on the first 4 chapters of the book. And then starting the next 4 episodes, what Kristen and I are going to be doing is reading 2 chapters of the book and doing the weekly exercises. So there's an exercise that you should be doing every day for the first for 1 week, and then another bit of exercises for the second week, third week, fourth week. And we'll let you know kind of how we're coming along and some of the things that we're noticing with our attention by doing the exercises and following that. So that's kind of what we're doing. If you want to follow along, grab the book and get caught up and start doing those exercises along with us. So I think it's going to be interesting. You do a lot of this stuff already, I think.
Well, in retrospect, yes, I didn't know the things that I've been trying to do every morning are doing this, but knowing that there is a particular way for a particular amount of time that I can increase my attention and not miss 50% of my life. I mean, maybe get it up to like 60 or 70%, and that it's going to take time. As you know, and as most of our, listeners probably know, is like, I'm up for a challenge. And so knowing that I'm going to improve myself with a challenge is like, okay, I'm all in. I can do this. Matter of fact, I can't imagine anybody not wanting to do this. Honestly.
Right on.
Yeah.
But I mean, it takes work. So it's whether or not anyone wants to actually sit down and do the work. But if you want to be able to sit there and have a conversation with somebody and not go, oh my goodness, what did they just say? And then just do the whole and pretend that you're listening. Or if you don't want to have to read a book 15 times because you can't remember the last chapter that you read over and over and over again because you just cannot hold your focus on it because it's not engaging enough, whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
Or maybe you're struggling at work, whatever it might be. Attention is something that is hounding us all of the time. And
I think it's kind of like the attention makes sure that you have details that you are putting into your brain because you need better recall. So if you're forgetting names, if you're having mental fog, like I absolutely do that. I literally will mention something, a movie, a book, a verse, something, a quote, and then a couple hours will go by and I can't remember who I got the quote from. So I know that there's a lot of room for improvement here. And so I was thinking like, oh my gosh, well, recall is the biggest benefit for having good attention. And so I'm thinking as the trader with assessing charts, would you like to improve your trading and your in trading analysis with the charts? Like, to me, this is very far reaching across every aspect of your life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I just had a conversation with somebody today about this very thing with trading. And we were talking about the whole flashlight thing. And I said that, the other day I was teaching a group of people how to build a trading plan. So I was walking them through it. And one of the questions that popped up is, should we only focus on one strategy or can we have multiple strategies in our plan? And I said to them, how long have you been trading? And they said, for, a year. And I said, are you profitable? No. I said, then stick to one strategy and only stick to one strategy because it's no different. Your strategies are very much like you need to be focusing in on that area. And for you to start looking at additional strategies is multitasking and you're pulling your attention away. And if you don't know how to pull it back when you need to fast enough, you're just going to be moving around going, I have no idea. And all of a sudden the bear around the corner is going to come and maul you to death. So that's just what happens because you're not skilled enough yet to focus your attention where you need it. And I mean, we've talked about this before, even driving a car and doing just tasks where
about it.
You do those tasks over and over and over again. And as you do those tasks, there's certain things that you just learn how to do them really well, and they become ingrained into the muscle memory of your body, and you no longer have to think about it. You can get up and do it. And at that point, you can advance to the next level and learn something new. And again, you continue to get better and better and better at whatever skill you're doing. But to take it all in at the same time, you just don't have the skill quite yet to focus in on what you need to focus in on. So yeah, It definitely applies everywhere. And no, I'm glad that I watched. Do you remember the part in the book where she talks about the vision that you have, the size of the vision that you have? And that's pretty much the focal point of your flashlight.
Clear.
What's that?
Yeah. What's clear?
Yeah. What's clear?
Because out here is blurry. So it's like what's clear ahead of you.
Yeah.
And then as it gets blurry, I understand. Mm-hmm.
And it's the size of your thumb. Like it's such a small amount of clarity that we have as human beings that everything else is blurry. So our focus range is so pinpoint and minute that to move beyond that, I mean, we're losing a lot of information to begin with. So yeah, it's that was actually quite an eye opener for me. I thought that was quite neat. Now,
I've really enjoyed every chapter we've gone through so far, and that
right.
That says a lot for me.
Oh, absolutely. So she talks about that, the cognitive fog being the depletion attention, and if you're feeling anxious, worried, or overwhelmed by your emotions, it's you're being hijacked with emotions. That's probably one of the things that happens to me a lot is that hijacked attention versus the depletion of attention. I get that sometimes, but I find that I'm struggling with that hijacked attention a lot more than anything else. How about you?
I sat there and ruminated on my day in and day out at the office. Like it's like I'm kind of being, pulled in different directions. I'm also juggling a lot of things. And so how do I do that different to better serve people? But
right.
Everything still needs to run smoothly. I've got a lot of just recently I'm asked, well, can I do this? And then I'm learning that I need to say no. And then I'm like, no, you're going to need to, just last night, they're like, can you? And I'm like, you need to put that in an email. Because even if I write a sticky note or a little note or somewhere, like, when am I going to get to that note? So I think it's making me make different decisions. I thought it was interesting that she said it might feel worse before it gets better. And I think that is because now you're realizing how much you are losing your attention, and not to be hard on yourself. That's the other thing. It's like, don't be hard on yourself. And then she interviewed or somehow got where she had a moment with a guy who's like this master meditator. Do you remember that part?
I do.
Where she asked him, what was exactly that she asked him? Because his response floored her.
I don't remember. I'd have to find it.
I think it's something to the effect of, how long does it usually take when you feel that your attention has been pulled away?
Oh, right.
And he said 7 seconds. Yeah. And she was like, what?
She was expecting like 12 minutes or 15 minutes, but 7 seconds. And what we're talking about here is, because one of the exercises to actually sit down and focus on your breath, one part of your breath, just one part of your breath, whether that be your stomach moving up and down as you're breathing in and out. And the idea isn't to, and we've talked about this before, it's not to block thoughts that are coming in. It's to recognize when thoughts are coming in and you're no longer focused on your stomach, and to quickly return to your breath. So that's how you start. At least that's the exercise that we've started with, is bringing your focus back to your breath, but recognizing how long it takes before one of those thoughts comes in and tries to hijack your focus, your attention. And thinking that a master meditator would have like 12 or 15 minutes of uninterrupted focus and can just focus on that breath without being hijacked once. That's, I think, what she was expecting. And he said 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So can you only imagine where you and I are sitting? Like, I just tried
Go ahead. You finish and I'll tell you my experience.
Well, I tried the, I think it was 3 minutes. I think she started us out with.
In chapter 5, right?
Hey, what was that?
I don't think it's in chapter 4. I think that's the beginning of chapter 5.
No, it wasn't. It was just.
Is it the very end of chapter 4?
Yeah, it was at the very end of chapter 4. She asked, just sit down as an exercise. This isn't one of the exercises that she does for the week. This was just something that she challenged us to do. So I sat back down and did it. And it was in this section where she was talking about what this master meditator had said to
I know
her.
what part you're talking about. Okay.
So I laid back and I was trying to focus on my breath, and I was getting interrupted regularly just by my own thought of focus on my breath, focus on my breath, focus on my breath, focus on my breath. Because I was trying so hard to focus on my breath. So I can only imagine going 7 seconds. 7 seconds feels like an eternity when you're sitting there focusing on your breath.
I have to tell you, that's probably why for the last 2 or 3 years, I've only used guided meditation, because the amount of me going off in different directions for all different reasons is extremely prevalent. So I happen to have just had this wild idea that I'm wondering if it's somewhere on YouTube, somebody's done, has put put this on there.
Right.
And I found one, and I think I shared it with you. And it's literally some woman that has created this thing. It's called the flashlight meditation. And I'm like, oh, bingo. Well, that's totally it. So, but that's 12 minutes, by the way.
Right.
So I've done it twice. And one of them happened to be, knowing that we were going to record today, one of them was this morning. And I had a moment because I live near the beach. And so we've had a first warm day in like months. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got time. I'm going to make this happen. And I went and sat on a bench. And it was intense. It was definitely constantly being pulled back, but I had to keep remembering that the goal is to come back.
Yes.
And I'm like, thank God she says this is going to get better, because I really need the improvement.
Well, you mentioned something earlier about how it might get worse before it gets better. And I think that that's the case when you try to retrain anything. When you are used to doing something a specific way, you develop some sense of competency with that skill, whatever that might be. And if you try to retrain, obviously you're going to get worse because you're no longer doing it the way you've become accustomed to doing it. So you will get worse and then you'll get better. And I think that's something that we should expect for everything that we do. There's going to be a moment where we get worse before we get better. But if you know that and you expect it and you understand it, you can work through it and you won't get discouraged.
Yeah. It's probably like a new golf swing or anything you're trying to alter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anytime you're trying to change that muscle memory, that's what's happening. So,
okay.
Cool.
Well, I'm excited.
I'm super excited. Hopefully you guys are too. Hopefully you go out and buy this book, read it. This one's definitely staying on the shelf. It's going to be one we're going to have to revisit a few times. I'm sure we'll get something out of it every time we do, because we're missing 50% of it as we're reading it now. So
dang it.
Right. That's it. So
then think about all the other books we've read.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
And that we like.
Yeah.
And that's, So we know we have to go back and read the good ones.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Cool. All right, folks. Well, that is it for this week. We will catch you next week. Later.